Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax Guys.
I have to look over and make sure that I'm getting the full effect of the scrolling banner. One of the greatest inventions known to FAIRtax volunteers. When you go to your local candidates forum, make sure you carry one of these with you.
And if you don't have one, you can go to fairtaxstore.org and get one.
Absolutely. I have a handful of them. And
I haven't been there in a while. I assume they still have them out there. I guess we'll have to check to be sure.
This thing might be worth some money then.
That's where I got mine.
Put it on the marketplace. I'll put it on FAIRtax Marketplace.
Oh, yes. Okay. We'll have to talk about the FAIRtax Marketplace a little bit later on in today's program. But right now in today's program, we need to promo a little bit what's coming up next week. Because we are, rapidly approaching the income tax filing deadline, the infamous April 15th day.
Oh, my goodness, yes.
And so this episode is going to stream for the first time on the 5th, and which makes next week's, the 12th, is going to be the FAIRtax Power Radio closest to the tax filing deadline without going over, as they say on The Price is Right. But we have got a special show lined up for next week because we have hornswoggled our buddy Jade Wally, our CPA friend.
In the middle of tax season. In the middle of tax season, he's going to join us.
Yes, but he is not really in the tax line of service. A lot of people think CPAs do taxes and taxes only, and there's nothing else. But there are quite a number of services that CPAs perform, and he's in one of the other lines of service. But he knows enough about the tax side to speak of it, with authority. But we have asked him to come up with some facts and figures on how much does the income tax system cost the American people. And he's going to dig into how much time people have to spend complying with the law, filling out the forms, how much money it costs both individuals and businesses to have this system. And the whole point of bringing all that up is we don't have to do it that way. We can have a much simpler, much more efficient, much fairer, much better system with the fair tax than to put up with all the garbage that Jade's going to be talking about next week.
And it's going to be a great program. A lot of information packed in there. There are several episodes within the FAIRtax Guys library that you should watch on a regular basis and share with your friends. This one with Jade Wally is going to be one of those.
Yes, anything where Jade appears is one that you need to watch because he's flat got it together when it comes to making a solid case for the fair tax based on how bad the current system actually is.
Yeah, and the other two, there's two that fit into that category that are already there. Episode number 198 and episode number 200 do a lot to explain the overview of the fair tax and also the prebate within those two episodes. Plus, this one next week, you can join us for that one, which will be coming up real soon.
All right. And you can go to fairtaxguys.com. No "the" in front of it, just fairtaxguys.com. There are a couple of links there. One will link you to the current episode as it exists on Vimeo that we load up every time we run one of these things. And then there's another link there that will take you to the YouTube channel that has the archive of all of the FAIRtax Power Radio shows that we've done. And you can go there and come up with those two episodes that you just mentioned. But
absolutely.
Okay.
But you know what time it is, don't you?
I said, can I dig in now?
Yes,
you know what this symbol means.
That's right. That means we're not starting a fire. That means Bob P is going to the congress.gov page.
Yeah, for those that are listening on the radio or listening to one of the audio only podcasts, we're just rubbing hands together in anticipation of going out. And again, we always say that I say one of, if not the best argument we can make in favor of getting rid of the current tax code and getting rid of the current system is to show people what's in it and what the Congress critters are trying to put in it. So we'll dig into that right now. Every time we do this, what we do is we go to congress.gov and there's a search function up there at the top of the page. You enclose the words Internal Revenue Code in quotes, so that you're searching on the whole string. Then over on the left side of the page, make sure that you're checking legislation only and only in the current Congress. And as of the date we are recording this, exactly 1,600 hits come back on that search.
Mercy.
And that is just incredible. And I've noticed that, I normally sort these by, newest to oldest date of introduction, and a bunch of them have been introduced here in just the past couple of days. And we'll start with this one, HR 7348, to amend the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 to establish a refundable tax credit. Now, that doesn't mean it just offsets taxes you owe. If your tax credit, refundable tax credit, is greater than the taxes you owe, you get back the difference. In other words, that's just handing you a check, handing you money.
Yeah.
And oh, excuse me, I was trying to suppress that, and it just had to come out. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to establish a refundable tax credit for commercial truck drivers. Now, no doubt that is in response to all the supply chain issues we've been having, and empty store shelves and things like that. So let's say, well, let's just give the commercial truck drivers some more money, which in itself, I mean, it sounds commendable that it's a good thing to do. But the problem with that, of course, is, well, commercial truck drivers are not the only ones involved in the supply chain. What about the warehouse workers? What about the factory workers that produce the products in the first place? And if you start,
you think it's the lobbyists that for the truck drivers?
Yeah, I think the Teamsters have probably got a pretty good lobbying effort up there in Washington, D.C. But again, the idea is, even though, helping commercial truck drivers is certainly a noble goal, and it's hard to come out and say, that's a bad idea, I'm against it. But you think it through and you see, well, there are more people than just commercial truck drivers that are worthy of this kind of, of help and assistance. And if you're going to help the truck drivers, well, how about the bus drivers? Then how about the, warehouse workers? How about thus and thus and thus and thus and on down the line? And when the government starts picking winners and losers through the tax code like this, we've got a rotten system that we need to get rid of.
What about me? I'm a consumer. I'm the guy at the end of the line. After everything's packed, shipped, delivered, store display, I'm the guy that goes in and buys all of that. I need a break too.
All right. Well, you need to get with your congressional representative and see if you can get a refundable tax credit for commercial truck drivers. And I looked in these, and because these were so recently introduced, there is no text in them like we sometimes see. So you just have that little bit to go by. Did it again.
Let me ask you a question.
Go ahead.
Is it enough for them to get in place inside the system, just with here's what the bill does? Do you see what I mean? In other words, and we'll come back later and add in details, but just to hurry up and get in line. Is that? Yeah,
I think they just get it published on congress.gov right quickly with a quick summary in it. And then they actually, sometimes, the text can be rather, long and drawn out, and it take them a while to get that actually published. But there we go.
That Royal typewriter up there, probably takes them, a couple of weeks to type 1,000 pages.
Yeah, it could be because their word processors are out of ink and they can't use them. Okay, let's move on from HR 7348, the truck driver refundable tax credit, to another one that says, this is HR 7341. This is to move something we talked about earlier, not long ago, to move the taxpayer Bill of Rights to the front of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986, and to establish minimum competency standards for tax return preparers, and your favorite phrase, for other purposes. Good idea. Let's move the taxpayer Bill of Rights to the very front of the Internal Revenue Code, and then they can just continue to ignore it like they always do.
Yeah, and we've been through the Bill of Rights. I forget which episode it is, but it's back there a few weeks.
Yeah, I think, was it publication 17 that it's in?
Oh yeah, it's many pages, tons of pages. It's the instructions that make sure that if you stole something, that you report it on your income tax.
Yeah, page 120 something, I think.
Yeah.
So we'll have to review that. But yeah, they want to move the taxpayer's Bill of Rights to the very front of the Internal Revenue Code. Don't want to beef it up. Don't want to go by it. He just wants to symbolically put it there.
That's right.
It also says
taxpayers matter.
Yeah. Now this raises another question too, to establish minimum competency standards for tax return preparers. If nobody can understand the Internal Revenue Code, how can you tell if somebody's competent at applying it or not? There's your $64,000 question for the day.
Yeah, who sets the standard? Who does that? Whose desk does that cross? That's what I'd like to know.
But if you could ask 50 different tax preparers the same question, give them the same data, and get 49 different answers, how do you know which one is right?
Correct. I mean, yes. I mean, who's the guy that gets hired to? Whose door do you knock on to lobby for the minimum standard? I mean, is it an IQ test kind of thing, or you got to be able to solve a Rubik's cube inside 30 seconds, or what's the deal?
Oh, I don't know. Well, we'll have to ask Representative Dan Newhouse of Washington that one. That's his bill. Scooting on down the line a little bit.
People up. We're going to start calling you the folks that are putting all this stuff in a tax code.
That reminds me. You still haven't told me if you got a hold of Debbie Stabenow about the municipal solid waste.
No, but I have a list, and the day that I get a moment, I have 2 or 3 representatives from different districts and states that I'd like to get a hold of to ask some key questions. Number one is why use the tax code, and the other is the municipal solid waste. Those are the 2 primary questions. I'd like to get a number of answers as to why. Why is it that we use the tax code to introduce bills? And I guess the third big question for me is for the representatives that are co-sponsoring the fair tax in Congress is why is it that we're not, what's your hurdle? What hurdle are you trying to get over to move the needle forward on it? I think those are legitimate questions because everybody's, when you're at home, you're talking, hey, this is great. And
they'll have to stop looking out for their own wallets over the.
Well, and I think that's why, you talk about what John Gaber's doing down in District 2 and 8 in Texas.
You're trying to set my Siri off again, aren't you?
Yeah, that's right. That's what happened the last time. Shh, Siri, quiet. Go to sleep, Siri. All we're doing is, but anyway, so, folks, if you're watching or listening, wherever you might happen to be, go to your election commission office and get a list, or go online and get a list of those folks that are running for your district to go to Washington, and make an appointment to go see them, and take one of those fair tax pledges with you, and make that happen. And tell them you're not getting a support or a vote or anything unless you are going to support the fair tax. And I think that's where we are, is we're at a point where we need the folks that are running to say, I'll support the fair tax. And then when they get in office, we'll have at some point across the country enough folks to push it across.
Yeah, as we mentioned before,
the tax president is going to be important at that particular juncture myself.
I say, I remember that both Mo Brooks and Marissa Selvig have told us that changing minds is a lot harder than just electing someone who's thinking the right way to begin with. So,
amen. I like that. I like the way that sounds. That sounds
all
good.
right. Well, let's move on here before we run out of time. This is HR 7317. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to incentivize food donation through tax credits and deductions and for other purposes. So if you want to, again, we don't have any text in here. We don't see exactly how they plan to do this, but to incentivize food donation through tax credits and deductions and for other purposes. And again, if you really want to break that down to what it fundamentally is, it's the government trying to control your behavior through the tax code.
Right. And most people are giving in nature. If they, they support the local food pantries and things like that. I know in our area, there are several different levels of service within the, food distribution, and involves restaurants and involves individuals too. But to have the government have to tell you to do that, I don't know. I think, what part of society isn't already in that giving mode when someone, goes back to, if you see me and I'm naked, clothe me. If I'm hungry, feed me, and that kind of thing. I think we get down to that level of community and love for our neighbors. That doesn't necessarily need to be dictated to us by the government, and especially through the tax code.
There you go. Well, I just don't like the idea of the government trying to manipulate people's behavior in any regard. Whether it's what kind of car you buy, what kind of light bulbs you buy, whether you donate to this, this, that, and the other, whatever. If the government is trying to steer your behavior by giving you tax incentives for doing what they want and, tax penalties for doing what they don't want, Again, that's a rotten system. We need to get rid of the system and replace it with a fair tax. Now, one more thing here in congress.gov. You have sent me a couple of articles this past week. You know, we always try to talk offline about what we're going to do in these Fair Tax Power Radio episodes.
We do plan these things out, don't we?
and you sent me a couple of articles that dig right into this one. This is HR 7271, Putting Gas Money Back in Your Pocket Act. Now, that came from Representative Josh Harder of California, and there is a little bit of text in this one. So you open this up there, and it says, Subchapter B of Chapter 65 of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 is amended by inserting after Section 6428B the following new section, 6428C, gas price rebates. Then it goes on and talks about what you're going to get, $500 or $1,000 in the case of a joint return, or you can multiply that by the number of dependents you get and who's eligible, and on and on and on. But again, this is HR 7271 to give a rebate back to taxpayers to make up for the fact that the gas prices have just shot through the roof. And I will resist with as well as I can getting into the idea that, well, this is a case where the government created a problem and then they're casting themselves as the savior and hoping that you will not remember that they created the problem, that you'll only remember that they came riding to your rescue and bailed you out of what they created in the first place. That's all I'm going to do with that one.
That's right. Excuse me while I go get my cape so I can fly in and save the day.
Okay.
Well, the Gas Rebate Act of 2022 is a proposal that would provide Americans with stimulus cash. That seems to be the latest form of excitement up there in Washington. And because of the gas prices, which, by the way, as of this recording in North Carolina, at least on the back roads, not on the highways, but on the back roads, they've dropped below $4. At one place I found, I'm not telling anybody, no, actually it's up near Rural Hall, for those of you listening in the local area, for $3.89 a gallon, which is the lowest I've seen it in a while.
Well, as of the day we're recording this, it's still $4.15 to $4.19 here in Central Florida. So I guess it varies by locality.
That's a long way to get gas down there in Florida. You know, they have to take it a long way. So
yeah,
anyway.
but that's interesting that this article you're talking about is from fingerlakes.com, if you want to go check it out. And it refers to the Gas Rebate Act of 2022. That's not the one we just looked at in congress.gov, because this article says you could see payments worth up to $100 a month. The one we read said $500. And I don't know if that was that $500 a month or $500 a year. Let's see what it says.
I'm going to bet you it's $500 a month because here we go under the act of the one at fingerlakes1.com, the digit one, fingerlakes1.com. The Gas Rebate Act of 2022 says under this act, Americans could see payments worth up to $100 a month for themselves and each dependent, only applying to Americans living in areas where the average price per gallon reaches over $4. And the act would last from its inception until the end of 2022. Can you imagine a government stimulus program ending at any point in time?
I don't know, but going back to HR 7271, I think this one is by the year, because it says for the purposes of this section, 2022 gas price rebate amount means with respect to any taxable taxpayer for any taxable year, the sum of $500 or $1,000 in the case of a joint return. But if in a joint return, that's almost $100 a month. But there's a
lot out there.
Even if they decide to go through with this, there are going to be a lot of conflicting proposals. And just they're going to be tripping over themselves to see who could give you the most. So, thank you for your vote come election time.
Right, we're in the midterm election, so it makes it possible for us to do all of these really wonderful things for you. And we'll see you at the next town hall, so you can pat us on the back.
Yeah, this same Finger Lakes article says California residents could see $1,000 for gas prices.
Yes,
and this, that, and the other. Of course, you sent another one as well too.
Right, was from iHeart. Yeah,
iHeart.
They're where everybody's working hard. Here's a $300 monthly stimulus checks for gas could be coming your way. An article by Dave Basner from a couple of weeks, about 4 or 5 days ago, it looks like. Any non-electric car owner. So now if you're in a gas car, it's now not a gas car, it is a non-electric car.
Mm-hmm.
That the prices at the pump have been hitting pretty hard lately. Earlier this month, they even surged to an all-time high. And now the government is hoping to offset the financial impact of fuel costs with another stimulus check. Because Americans could wind up spending $2,000 more on gas this year, politicians are devising relief plans. And as we said, the 3 Democrat representatives from California, Connecticut, and Illinois are looking to a plan to give $300 monthly to certain Americans. And here we go, choosing, as opposed to it being equal for all, choosing certain Americans as long as the nation's average gas price remains above $4 a gallon. Yeah. So the plans are certainly out there. And no likelihood on whether or not the proposals are going to make it all the way to get passed or not.
Yeah, say this article, names by name, Mike Thompson, John Larson, and Lauren Underwood, yes, as the sponsors of this $300 a month one. And again, the HR 7271 that we just looked at with $500 a year, that is Representative Josh Harder, also of California. So I'm not sure what that means, but there it is.
They're in the halls of Congress talking, going to and from the lavatory and back to vote on other packages that are out there. My concern about stimulus checks, of course, more money into the already inflated economy, but it's also if the fair tax were in place.
Yeah.
How would you be able to turn a spigot on temporarily to allow a little bit more cash into people's pockets? Would that be possible through the prebate?
Oh, absolutely. And let me back up to something here in this other, Figure Lakes One article that says stimulus report shows 645,000 Americans have not seen their third stimulus check. And that went out, ages ago. So this just shows you that the IRS distributing stimulus checks is, again, part of a really rotten system that we need to replace with a fair tax. And again, the fair tax has a system in place, the prebate, like you mentioned, that could be used. I imagine it would take an act of Congress, and the president would have to sign it into law in order to monkey with the amount of the prebate. But you could always do that rather than have to get 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 different competing bills like that. True. You could just go increase the prebate. You would have a debate on how much to increase it and for how long. But
you could have it be general in nature and flexible on the amount of time that additional prebate would be in place for various events, catastrophic or emergency or otherwise, or maybe regional, like in the event of a tornado in the Midwest, or in Florida, for example, or the Carolina coast, et cetera, East coast with a hurricane or another weather-related event that would require a certain turnaround period where people would actually get back to a normal type of living situation.
Yeah. Well, let me run this by you too. When you're thinking that the IRS is going to be distributing these stimulus payments, the people that need them the most, the lowest income folks, are probably not filing tax returns. So the IRS does not have their contact information, but Correct. The Social Security Administration would administer the prebate under the fair tax. So if you're a lower income person, and especially if you're retired or on disability, the Social Security Administration would have your contact information, and in many cases would still have your banking information that they can make a direct deposit with. So distributing an increased prebate through the Social Security Administration under the fair tax would be much more effective in reaching the people that need the help the most than trying to get the IRS to do it. And exactly. As I say, we're going to get into probably in a couple of weeks, because next week we're going to be talking to Jade Wiley. But in a couple of weeks, we're going to go into how horribly backlogged the IRS still is just doing tax returns. And then they're also backlogged on these stimulus. It is a rotten agency to try to do this through.
Well, and that's the thing about the fair tax and essentially closing down the Internal Revenue Service that you have to stop and think about it for a minute. How many people it takes to do what is happening with the income tax, the number of pages in publication 17. If you have a little bit of time, download it and read it. It'll cross, your eyes will cross and smoke will come out of the top of your head. But you think about that, and then you think about the fair tax and eliminating the Internal Revenue Service, essentially setting up a communication for electronic transfer of your tax at the cash register to the state that then goes to Washington at the Social Security office. How many less people that would take to bring about that transaction versus what's happening now, plus the shoebox full of receipts and things that you have to keep up with and that your tax accountant has to keep up with to make April 15th, or in this case, April 18th happen. You just have to stop for a minute and think about the difference there. And one thing that we'll talk about next week with Jade Wally includes all of the different pieces of the puzzle that puts the Internal Revenue Service at the top of this catastrophic heap of our income tax system, and truly how much it costs. You definitely don't want to miss next week's program.
Okay. Well, you mentioned you wanted to talk about the marketplace. You got about 90 seconds left to do it. Go.
Good. Marketplace. Yes. FAIRtaxMarketplace.com is a lot like any other online shopping service with the great benefit of supporting the fair tax. And be thinking, folks, first of all, let's go ahead and go to the site and register, FAIRtaxMarketplace.com, FAIRtaxMarketplace.com. Shop online, support the fair tax, free enterprise and small business. It's an opportunity for you if you're a craft person or if you have a service that you'd like to offer in your area.
Like a Moravian bakery?
Yes, exactly.
My wife says I needle you about that too much.
Every single time. That's okay, because that would be a great opportunity. Small businesses can get to a cross section of the entire fair tax membership, the volunteers and everyone across the country who are supporting and volunteering for the fair tax. You as a business person can be a part of the Fair Tax Marketplace, and I urge you to go there and get set up today. Once it's in place and everybody's there, it will work very similar to an Amazon transaction. If you have had a particular service, or you're selling something on Amazon, it's essentially the same concept.
Yep. It'd be like buying something from a third-party vendor through the Amazon site. The FAIRtax Marketplace is just the mall that you walk into, and then you walk into the individual store when we get in there. Yeah. And that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power Radio. We've had a lot of fun in what seemed like a really quick time. So again, we are the FAIRtax Guys. I'm Bob Paxton.
And I'm Bob Scarborough.
Providing you again that the fair tax is the only truly fair tax. And once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So tell me how it works.
You know, it's probably changed since the last time I saw it, but the short answer would be, you want to take this one?
Oh, sure. Okay. Imagine bringing home everything you make. You don't get taxed for saving or accumulating wealth, and your boss doesn't get taxed more even if he pays you more.
Wow, now see, that's amazing.
So the end result of all that is the cost of producing products and running a business goes down, so things cost less. And on top of all that, imagine every criminal, non-citizen, and under-the-table worker also paying taxes.
That's amazing.